Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we'll learn how to rise above road rage. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran bhakti yogi, author, and a monk. There are around 10 members on Zoom. People are still dialing in. So thank you so much, Vaish, for another episode on Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, JM. It's a real pleasure to be back here and great to see everybody. Today, we're going into a phenomenon which has become famous, road rage, and how it relates to the rest of our lives also. Not just on the road, we're on the road of life. So whatever principles we discuss here today will be applicable, hopefully, through all the aspects of our life. Does that sound okay? All right. Thank you. So this morning, well, it's afternoon technically, we have an opportunity, since we're all here together, to start with some introspection. Look within, spector, intro, inside. What's inside? Well, we are. And oftentimes we're looking outwardly only, attaching ourselves to various situations and objects. But what about the seer? Who's looking out? The seer often remains unseen. And in that situation, we may be fully absorbed in our life situation and forget about ourselves. Introspection is not so difficult because we are conscious beings. We have the choice to point our attention in whatever direction we wish. And if you ever feel even the slightest anxiety in life, remember, you can always change the object of your meditation. Everybody's looking at something and taking it in. And we can change that object at any time. So, as I like to say, if you don't like what you're being subjected to by your own mind, then change the subject. So introspection is a way of changing the subject. And mantra meditation is an age-old process. It's ubiquitous. You find it in every culture. Sound carries consciousness. It also helps to quell the churnings of the mind and help us to be aware of who we are beyond the body. So if JM will indulge us, he can turn to the slide which has the mantra Nitai Gauranga. And this is a famous mantra. There's an avatar named Nitai and another avatar named Gauranga. And together they unlock the great secrets of our self. And by repeating their names, we enter into an awareness of our source. So what I'm going to do is turn on a drone. And if you'd like to go more deeply, then try sitting up a little straighter than you were a second ago. Not uncomfortably so, but just to bring your mind to an alert state. And begin by regulating your breathing and bring your awareness to your breath and just relax. And let go of any of your obligations, any concerns, the cognitive load we carry throughout the day. You can just leave by the side of the road, and let's take this journey together down the road that takes us to our own consciousness. As you're breathing, notice your breath. Be alert and notice that you're the one breathing and you're the one noticing your breathing. And just be fully present and experience your life, the life breath, the exhilaration of consciousness which animates your body, and be in a serene state. And let go. And now we're going to experiment with the sound of the mantra. I'll repeat the mantra 5 times. If you like, you can say it with me behind muted mics. Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga. Now listen to the subtle echo of the mantra we've just repeated in your own mind. And ask yourself, who is noticing that echo? And you can answer, I am. And where are you? Where are we? We're right here, where we always are, as the witness. And breathe. And again, notice your breath. Again, notice that your consciousness illuminates your hands, your feet, your chest, your back, your head. You as the conscious entity are animating the body, illuminating the body. And also be aware that there's a higher power that allows us this vision. We're not independent. Now, rub your fingers together, wiggle your toes, become aware of your robot-like body, and come back into the external world and into the Zoom room. I'm almost sorry to turn that drone off. Thank you, everyone, for testing out that process of mantra meditation. I hope you had a good experience. And we've been talking here over the last several weeks about the modes and how we are influenced by the 3 modalities of the world. There's sattva, goodness, gives a kind of wisdom, serenity, peacefulness. Then there's rajas, which means we're animated by the ambition to get ahead. Rajas also can make us anxious, can even make us angry, Sometimes it flares up and it burns like fire. And then there's tamas, which is ignorance. We can forget our own selves, our self-interest, and we can descend into a kind of darkness. And these modes are mixed. They mix together in combinations and permutations. And we practically can see what Arjuna asks about to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita on the topic of rajas. What is it that impels us to do things that are not good for us or that we regret later? For instance, snapping at somebody. And one of the ways that we know that that manifests in the world is when people drive cars and on the road, they feel a surge of indignation when somebody's a little reckless in the way they drive near us, perhaps. Possible? You've heard of it, right? Road rage. So we'll be relating this to the rest of our lives as well, whether we're driving a car or walking down the street or interacting with a loved one. It's always possible for rajas to flare up and turn into some kind of a what we call rage. I wonder what rage means anyway. Let's look it up. Doesn't sound good, I must say. Violent, uncontrollable anger, the violent action of a natural agency, a vehement desire or passion, an instance of aggressive behavior or violent anger caused by a stressful or frustrating situation, a widespread temporary enthusiasm or fashion, intense feeling, especially prophetic, poetic, or marital enthusiasm or ardor. I'm going to go with an instance of aggressive behavior or violent anger caused by stressful or frustrating situation. Does that sound fair to you? At least for today? Okay, thank you, Vicky, JM, and Chuck for nodding your head, Radha Kripa. Here we go. Let's look at some slides. Today, rise above road rage. Now, why do we say rise above? It's because we're not actually part of the three modes of material nature. They merely affect us the way we're affected in dreams. And we act in either rational or irrational or absolutely inane ways based on how we're influenced by the three modalities of the world. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives this advice about rising above the modalities. So we could rise above road rage. We could be in a situation where we don't become, we're not overcome by aggressive behavior or violent anger caused by a stressful or frustrating situation. What would that be like? Of course, for many of you, maybe you're already in that situation, but if you've ever succumbed to a sense of anger, even if somebody accused of you of being snippy, what does that mean, snippy? Like, I didn't do that. Or something comes out that's inordinate. You may just be in an ordinary situation, not realize how stressed you are, and someone says, "Pass me the spoon." It's like, why didn't you say please? Or whatever it might be. There can be a sense of overwhelming uh, rush of this mode of passion. So what to do about that? Rise above it. Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita, or at least rise up to sattva. So you're looking at things more objectively and not being affected by the situation at hand. And if one becomes transcendental, means you rise above the three modalities, then you're situated in what's called Brahma Bhuta, which means you are situated in pure consciousness, unaffected by the material world, which means the modalities, because that's what defines the material world, these three modalities. So if anybody would like to sign on and be snippy free for life, this is your program today. So rising above road rage. Let's go into it, JM. What do you say? Where does it come from, road rage? Well, road rage comes, as we were talking about, by the modes of passion. But if we look at slide number 4, we can ascertain in the everyday vernacular that it comes from stress that accumulates in the body. There's ways in which we are under pressure, maybe for deadlines. Have you ever felt overworked? People gave you too much work for too little pay? Or has anybody um, eh, had what you felt were false expectations for you in your life, your behavior, your status, or for no good reason, apparently? Have people mistreated you or neglected you or anything like that? That could cause stress. For instance, if you're in a relationship and let's say the person ghosts you and just stops answering your communications, you could carry that stress for years. It could all be packed in there. Find it in your heart, you find it in your nervous system. It runs up and down. And at any time, if we're poked in the wrong way, it can come out. So if we look at the next slide, number 5, this is a circumstance that people are familiar with. We already established that when we're driving, we can be triggered. There's a reason for that. The reason we become triggered by driving, I'll go into in just a minute. I don't want to preempt the upcoming slides, but if we can all agree that it's possible when you're driving to be especially triggered by various other drivers, and the next slide talks about a few possible scenarios that might trigger us when we're driving. Maybe an aggressive driver. On the 101 freeway, sometimes I notice 2 cars are racing in traffic or people weaving in and out. Does this sound familiar? In fact, I used to live in Los Angeles. I moved because I didn't like the way people drove. That was one factor. But there were others, but it's a it's a daily occupation for most people driving somewhere. And people get into these aggressive habits, unsafe lane changes. You're supposed to put your blinker on, I think, right? Some people, maybe that didn't come standard with their car, but because they just weave in and out without turning it on. Tailgating, getting way too close. They miss that part of driver education that you're supposed to be at least 1 car length away for every 10 miles an hour. And then we also might read into the way people are driving as a perceived slight, which means that somebody had intentionally mistreated us by the way they're driving. These are a few suggestions. There may be other categories, but are these relatable? Has anybody ever experienced any of these while driving anywhere? Just want to make sure that everyone has a common understanding of what I'm talking about. Carvin is giving me a thumbs up. Radha Kripa, many thumbs up. Mayank, Manu. Okay. Well, are there antidotes? Is there a pill you can take? Well, don't do that. I saw a sign that says buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't take any pills. To make yourself calmer, you might fall asleep at the wheel or drive without full awareness. But figuratively speaking, is there a way to counteract road rage? Yes, absolutely. Why else would I be giving this presentation today? Okay, antidotes. First is before you drive, be intentional when you get into your car and decide that you'll tolerate minor trespasses as you go out into the world of the freeway and all the roadways. You'll decide ahead of time, I'll tolerate small trespasses that come up while I'm driving, so that you're prepared. And also keep in mind that driving is dangerous, and don't make it more dangerous, because there's a way in which we forget. We think, oh, safety features, and since I haven't had an accident for a while or ever, it probably won't happen to me. But if we become aware of the fact that it's very dangerous. I once was in a small accident in India, and it took me months before I didn't have a sense of angst in getting into any car. And especially in India, sometimes you order a cab, they show up and they have bald tires and no safety belts. And, from that very date, I insisted cab has to have safety belts, has to have full tires, and so forth. And we may forget that driving around in the world is dangerous. Now, this relates to our very lives. We just take it for granted that I'll just keep walking. But the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ancient wisdom text, says, Padam padam yad vipadam. Vipadam means at any step we take can be our last. It's dangerous in this world. And so to have a healthy awareness, not a neurosis, but a healthy awareness that the world is unstable. It's not a safe place. What to speak of when we're going fast. The Ayurveda talks about what speed humans should travel at, and it talks about don't go faster than a bullock cart can travel. Nowadays, we go sometimes 600 miles an hour in a plane. What to speak of cars where we're vulnerable. Planes statistically are safer than cars. You're driving around in a tin box. So be aware that I should be careful. And the next is what I call simultaneous forgiveness. Now, when we're driving and we perceive any of the above situations that somebody's taking advantage of us, cutting in front of us, not being careful, that sense of indignation may rise within our hearts. But if we preempt it, as I say, if there are minor trespasses, and as soon as you notice it or it's been perpetrated upon you, that somebody has been inconsiderate or driven close to you dangerously, then try this mantra. Say, I forgive you. You want to try saying it? I forgive you. It's counterintuitive because as soon as that impulse rises in the chest that how dare you, there's the tendency for people to put their fist on the horn to teach them a lesson, or, of course, use your horn if it's necessary, but not as a punitive measure to hold the horn down. Or somebody might make a gesture to the other person. So many times people do that and then they end up crashing. In fact, when I first moved to the Bay Area and I was frequenting Skyline Boulevard, there was a story in the paper that talked about a man driving a motorcycle and he got in a duel with somebody in a pickup truck, and they somehow one was offended by the other, and the man in the pickup truck had, out of a sense of passion, just jerked his steering wheel, and it bumped the back tire of the motorcycle. The motorcyclist flew off the road and was killed. And the driver of the pickup truck had otherwise been an upstanding citizen with no prior record of being violent or doing anything wrong in his life. But he ended up going to prison for vehicular manslaughter. How long did that take? A millisecond of that sense of rage that welled up in his chest. How dare this motorcyclist share the road with me in an inappropriate way. And then he jerked the steering wheel, and next thing you know, his whole life was turned upside down. So the consequences of this mode of passion that wells up within us, it can affect us in all areas of our life. In a relationship, if you feel that urge well up in you and you say the wrong thing, something demeaning, or out of a sense of frustration, you accuse somebody, then it's very difficult to take back because you already said it. So better, mention the wisdom literatures, to have self-control. And one of the ways to do that is to practice this art of simultaneous forgiveness. Even as it's happening, you can say this out loud: I forgive you. In fact, I was once driving with a friend of mine who tends to get a little irritated when driving if somebody doesn't drive properly. And merging onto the freeway, he noticed that somebody didn't let him on. And he felt, I could tell that that urge welled up in his chest, and he started accelerating. And then I said the mantra. I was the passenger, and I said, "We forgive you." And as soon as I said that, it kind of broke that spell of that rush of anger that he had. And a second later, he looked over at me going, he said, "How'd you do that?" And to this day, he remembers it, that incident. It was 15 years ago at least. And whenever we get together, not all the time, but he will bring it up from time to time. I remember that time when you said, when you uttered that mantra, because it's utterly contrary to what oftentimes people feel is the right thing to do. The mode of passion colors us. Incidentally, the mode of passion is the color red, appropriately. Like when you see red, it's practically literal, and it also is symbolic of the mode of passion that we see red. But we can preempt it if we're ready to forgive and let it go. And when we talk about forgiveness, forgiveness isn't condoning what anybody else does, but it's releasing ourselves from the situation so that we're not consumed by it. Because rajas, that middle mode, it burns like fire, and fire can burn everything to ashes. Once it starts, who knows how far it can go? It can burn down everything in your life. So learning to let it go instantaneously by having this mantra ready to go. I'd like to hear a few comments. What do you feel viscerally when I mention this about possibly using it as a way to release yourself from the mode of passion, that passion, anger that comes up when you feel road rage? What do you think, Mayank or Flakka? Would you ever use this to, and just the very suggestion of it, that how does it sit with you?
Hare Krishna, Vaisesika Prabhu, this is Sundar.
Sundar. Wow, we got Sundar on today. Go ahead, Sundar.
No, I think it's an excellent idea to actually practice this. Um, of course, you know, it's of course, by practicing more, I think we can imbibe this culture into our minds and hearts. But I was just remembering Dr. Doty, who's no more, unfortunately. Um, he's the founder of the Stanford Compassion and Compassion Center. He was actually myself and Vaisesika Prabhu went to meet him. He was in the hospital, and there was something, the doctor did some mistake, and his conditions got worsened so much so that he had to go to a rehabilitation center. But when we met him, he said, "I forgive that person. I have no grudge against him." So I was just remembering, um, as we were talking about, I was just remembering, meeting him, and he was talking about how he had no grudge and he completely forgave the doctor who did a mistake on a surgery.
Yes, and thank you for remembering Dr. Doty. He was a dear friend, and he did so much for the world. And we're really sorry that he had to go through that. But we were uplifted, even though he was in such a compromised position when we went to see him. he had a forgiving heart. It's quite amazing. Thanks for bringing that up, Sundar. And what came into my mind when I heard him speak those words, that he didn't take it personally and he didn't hold a grudge, was this is a high-minded person. And be able to have this release, to be prepared for it, is one of the tenets of the teachings of Chaitanya. He said, if you want to be in spiritual consciousness, learn how to walk in the world with this sense of forgiveness and let things go very easily. It doesn't mean to become a doormat. It doesn't mean to not do due diligence where it's when needed, but it does mean to be free from the mode of passion which consumes us and wants us to burn the other person as much as possible. Let that go. Do the due diligence. Be methodical but dispassionate. Literally dispassionate, because the middle mode, rajas, is passion. It impels us to, but be dispassionate. Manu, and congratulations on the event you put on Tuesday. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much,
Yeah, it was
you
great.
for making that possible. I just was remembering an incident since we were talking about, you mentioned that the points. Actually, like 10 years back, there was a situation where I was very upset with one of my family member, and it was not that I stopped talking. But last year, when I was reflecting, I felt that I had carried that baggage of, I didn't forgive her for those 10 years. I mean, I didn't share with her, but I was carrying that grudge. And then last year, somehow, I got an opportunity to actually have those reflections with myself, write those down. And then this thing helped. Like, I just said to myself that I forgive you. Like, and that felt like a relief. So yeah, I was reflecting on the same.
It's such a relief. And reading the Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that we live in a universe that is ruled by justice. In other words, everything evens out here eventually. We don't have to try to even everything out. Again, we can do our due diligence to the degree that it doesn't distract us from the main purpose of life. But we can also always remember that everyone, whatever good or bad one does in this world, gets evened out, as we all get what we deserve. So we don't have to be so involved in meting out justice individually or retaliate against people. And it's a relief to let that go and to use that mantra, I forgive you. It brings us to a higher state of consciousness. Jam, Radhakripa's got his hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, the rajas is usually very powerful, and especially when we are living in a state of situation or maybe the place where everything is driven, rush, rush, run, place, environment, office, everywhere. So it's very challenging when I was thinking about when you're driving, you have a deadline, you want to reach their time, you are optimizing everything against that, trying to fill in every seconds in that to remain in that consciousness where I, forgive people if there's a road rage. So I was just thinking maybe, as you mentioned in the beginning, as you start driving, at that juncture, you have a state of your consciousness that reaching a destination A to B is more important rather than on time. Because when I was driving day for yesterday, there was a traffic jam on the highway. Then I felt like, oh my goodness, it's going to be late. But then I suddenly realized, what if I was that person who met with accident? I would prefer to be late than that. And then my consciousness shifted thereafter. I said, I'm okay to be late. So I was just thinking maybe it is more important in the morning we have our conscious effort to be in a state of sattva or little bit or sadhana, which we do, then we can be more effective in fine tuning our consciousness during such situations.
Yes, good point. I'll just translate the word sadhana. It means to have a practice towards the goal of being fully conscious of our source. So a spiritual practice called sadhana. And especially if we start in the morning with 2 feet on the ground and have an experience that we're not the mind, we're not the body, we're able to separate ourselves from that by our chanting of the mantra early in the morning, then as we go about the day, it's much more possible to interact with the world in an enlightened way. And that gives us a kind of sense of uh, uh, spiritual uprightness. I'm looking for the right phrase. I've used it before, but it has to do with self-esteem, spiritual self-esteem. In other words, when we know that we can control our senses, that we're not subjected to rajas that pushes us in a certain way, because we've practiced doing it and we're practicing throughout the day, the fruit is we start to have confidence in ourselves and the way we move in the world, that we're not being pushed by rajas, but we're actually uh, preemptive and we're able to find higher ground and rise above it. We show up in a completely different way. We interact with people in a different way when we have that wherewithal to rise above rajas. So nice point, Radhakripa, about taking time to practice and also being aware that you, you if you try to rush and you forget yourself in that, you can lose something. You can lose your sense of purpose as you're being driven just to get to the next place.
Yeah.
Yes.
Saga just made a point that very practical exercise that can cut right through rajas. I'm going to try it.
Where did you
I think
see that?
it's there in the chat. She mentioned.
Oh,
I think she's referring to I forgive you.
I must be in the wrong chat. Okay. And what did she say? Oh,
She
I see.
said
I was in the wrong chat. Okay, yeah, very practical exercise that I can cut right through rajas. I'm going to try it. Yeah, it's a little, when you first try it, you might think like, what am I doing? I always raise my hand. I go, I forgive you. and and if I'm driving with somebody and they know that I do that, it always comes as a surprise because it seems so counterintuitive. Everyone's thinking, okay, here comes rajas, and then you all of a sudden you go, I forgive you, and then rajas just that's it dissipates suddenly, and everyone's like, wow, how'd that happen? Vicky.
Thank you. I wanted to introduce and welcome Jennifer. We met at Bhakti Farms, and she's been attending programs at Bhakti Center. When I told her about today, she sent me a voice message about how much this topic would resonate with her, at least in terms of how our bodies are like vehicles and we're driving them around. And yeah, I think she's actually driving right now, but she left a comment. And Jennifer, if it's convenient, we'd love to hear from you.
If she unmutes it says, I forgive you, then we'll know she's using the system. Great to have you, Jennifer. Thank you very much. And please be careful. Drive safely.
If I
Pardon
may,
the word.
oh, sorry, JM.
No, please go ahead, Jen.
I just wanted to add that it's all about how you perceive the other actions, right? Like sometimes a few months ago when I was upset about other stuff, I felt like those actions on the road were against me. But if you change your mindset to even see that it's not necessarily against you, then you don't react to it, right? Now I can just be like, wow, that guy did this on the freeway. I just like my reaction is wow, but I don't take it as an action against me. But like I never thought of it as I forgive you. It's interesting. Just different mindsets, I guess.
Yeah, nice point about changing your perspective. And we could, Zyla, think of the driving experience as a laboratory to test out our sadhana. How are we doing? Let's put ourselves in a little test tube and see.
It's all just
Isolate.
one big experiment, right?
Yeah. The universe is a classroom, and you have to pass this course, be able to drive without road rage in order to come to the next level. It's very practical. And it's noticeable that that's one of the places we release a lot of stress and it ends up not going well for us and so forth. So I really like your point about changing perspectives. Fantastic. JM, I see we got something from Mayank.
Yes, Mayank says, when we are in rage and can't control doing harm to someone, what we are supposed to be an instrument in hands of the modes or karma to give them some grief.
When we are in rage and can't control doing harm to someone, what if we are supposed to be an instrument in the hands of the modes of karma? Let somebody else be that instrument. We're not obligated to do that. Unless you were appointed. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, it's one of the main points. Arjuna is a policeman. Arjuna is a warrior. He's supposed to protect the innocent. And when people who come to abuse others rise up, then that's his job. He's supposed to do it. And so he was appointed, and that's one of the main lessons in the Bhagavad Gita is if you do your duty properly, then you're not held accountable. Whereas if you whimsically do something and say that I'll take it on myself, in other words, anger can be used for a higher purpose. But most people lose their anger, they don't use it. And then they justify it and they say, oh, it's for a good cause. Most people try to get out of it once they've been burned and burned others because Rajas rose up. It's much smarter to follow your dharma, do what you're supposed to do, and you can do your duty much more efficiently if you don't allow yourself to be affected by rajas. And so we should do everything we can to remain above rajas, be at least in sattva. And when things happen, then we can deal with them without that sense of passion that burns. So you don't have to, unless you've been assigned to be the instrument of somebody's karma, then don't volunteer.
There are a couple of more comments. One, Zila says, I think you have to analyze why you got angry. And Flaka says, the root emotion under anger is sadness. Stopping to notice the root can transform our response.
Oh, nice points. Analyze it. They're very similar. Analyze why you got angry. It's good to analyze it. And Flacca made this point about noticing, analyzing the root. It can transform our response. Excellent, excellent.
And Ariana asks, how do you know if you were assigned to be part of someone's karma?
Well, as an example, let's just say that you are a prison guard and somebody was assigned to be put in a prison cell. And so you have the keys, you open the door and you escort the person and then you close the door and lock it up. And you're not held accountable for that because it was an authorized process. On the other hand, if you grab somebody off the street that you don't like the looks of and you lock them in your car, you're going to be arrested for kidnapping and false imprisonment. So that's the difference. We have to have some, I mean, I'm talking about in secular life, if you're authorized to do something, and it holds in the cosmic sense also, unless you were given the job, for instance, to instruct somebody in a certain way. This is also prevalent to people giving free advice. If you're the teacher, you're supposed to give critical advice, albeit you should do it in a way that people can accept it. I hope that helps. Yeah, oh, so literally assigned and got it. JM, there's a plethora of comments today.
Yeah. So, yeah, Ariana confirmed that it's actually assigned duty, so she agreed. She understands it. Then Jen says, this topic of seemingly assigned karma delivery is very relevant for me now. It's what brought me here today. Thank you.
How interesting. This topic of seemingly assigned karma delivery is very relevant for me now. It's what brought me here today. Well, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat. In fact, I'm moving there now to hear what that means at some point. And Jam, there's one more.
Yeah, Abhijit says, this was promoted in Amazon Slack channel for stress management techniques, and I found Bhakti on.
Oh, good. Yeah. It definitely, this is, somebody asked last night, I did a program in San Francisco itself, and somebody asked during the question and answer period, what's the difference between tolerance and sublimation? In other words, you can stuff an emotion or you can learn to tolerate. And tolerance is based on knowledge and perspective. When you have a higher perspective and you tolerate something because you know that it's not your duty to overreact, and also you're fully aware of the consequences, and therefore you don't overreact. This is, and also because you're dispassionate, because you've cultivated a higher mode of nature, at least sattva, and therefore you're not pushed by it. And when you tolerate something from with those assets, then it's a very different situation from just stuffing it and holding back. And this is something Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Vishaya vinivartante nirahara siddhina rasa varjam rasopyasya param drushan nivartate, which means that ordinarily when people try to hold back the senses, they still have a desire to do the thing. But he says, when you're able to develop a higher taste, that means you're experiencing some happiness that comes from within, that's above the stimulation of senses in the material world. It's a spiritual happiness, inward happiness called Atma Sukha, self-happiness. So then from that position, you're actually renounced because you don't even want the lower thing. It's not a compulsion to take it and you're stuffing it. JM, I should show a few more slides. He's ready for it. He's got his finger on the button right there. Okay, so here's the perspective. One of the reasons I analyzed this myself, and to my surprise, when I looked into the research on road rage, I found that this is one of the main points made by researchers, is that anonymity is the backdrop for road rage. What does that mean? It's a very impersonal environment. I'm in a car, somebody else is in a car. I don't know who's driving it. I make many assumptions. I just see a big, dangerous object coming at me, and I don't know who's in it. So one of the ways, and some of you mentioned this, that we overcome that sense of indignation and rage, change anonymity to recognition. I looked up the opposite of that word, and it is recognition. Now, what does that mean? So, and why is that picture of the person in the car looking at us? Is because if you try this thought experiment, let's say somebody cuts you off and you feel that rush of rajas come into your chest and your eyes, and you want to burn somebody. If you had the power to shoot fire from your eyes, you would blow up their car. Let's say that comes in, and then all of a sudden you realize that it's your mom driving, and you look and it's like, oh, that's mom. You changed paradigm suddenly, and then you would say, oh, mom, sorry, I didn't mean to look at you like that. So much has to do with that. And in the Upanishads that are millions of years old, they've been passed down orally and they've been written down within the last 5,000 years or so. There's this point about how we move in the world. If we see people in as non-entities, just as their bodies, then we can hate them or we can love them based on superficiality. That's a matter of our own conditioning, that we like some people, we don't like other people. Some people we find repulsive, some people we find attractive. That's very superficial. And the Upanishad said, Anupashyati, learn to see what's beyond the body. Who's driving it? Who's the driver within the body? And it says, if you learn to understand that there's a higher being just like you driving that other body, whatever body it may be, human body or animal body, then you'll show respect to that person just as much as if you see a car coming, you're annoyed by the person's driving, but then you realize that it was your mom driving, then you change your perspective. I mean, I'm assuming you like your mom. So there's a way in which when we like all living beings because we recognize that they're just like us, and they're going through so many things just like us here in the material world, but beyond the body, they're exalted. Then we treat people differently and we don't overreact when people act in ways that we would normally find annoying. So change of perspective from anonymity to recognition, recognize. Change the perspective, I'm saying, on the practical way when you're driving. Just do the thought experiment. Oh, that was my mom driving. How would I treat her? Would I make a gesture? Would I honk my horn? Would I try to drive her off the road? No. Hopefully you like your mom. Okay. Then we have reframe the intent. How do we know that a person intended to do something? Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they just came from the hospital and found out they have some incurable disease, whatever it is. This comes up in that excellent book called the Four Agreements, which include, the first one is your speech should be impeccable, then never assume, never take anything personally, and always do your best. So the middle two apply here. Like, don't assume that person did it on purpose or they're being aggressive towards you, and also don't take it personally. So if you dismiss your mind's assumption that it was intentional, then you can rise above it. Next is something we mentioned already in slide 11. Consider the consequences. Always consider consequences, because the mode of passion erases that part of our brain temporarily. And we forget what might happen if we do something to hurt somebody. Chuck, are you on a plane?
I am, yes. This is also good
I
advice
recognize that
for
purple light up there. Where are you going?
back from Seattle to San Francisco. This is
Oh,
all
good.
good advice for traveling by plane as well.
Yeah, right. Walking in airports and so forth. Well, fantastic. Good to see you. I'm glad you're coming our direction. Yeah, so can always consider consequences. Human beings can discover causality and can be aware of it. So that applies in our daily life. Always consider, what's the consequence of what I'm going to do? And think of that word, consequence. Things unfold in a sequence according to what we do, where we place our consciousness. So always consider, have that pan scale, get a tattoo like that. You can put it on your arm or your somewhere, and like weigh the circumstances, what's best to do. Rajas just tells us, go swing, do it, turn the wheel, but become a higher being. Rise above it by considering consequences. That's in the mode of goodness. And then the next one is really the overarching point here. Oh, breathe. That's not the overarching point, but it's really important to remember to breathe. And we started with that exercise just an hour ago of breathing. And sometimes we forget to do that. Remember where we are, who we are. We're a soul within a body, a little robot driving around on this terra firma. And take a moment to look inwardly, but don't close your eyes when you're driving. Okay, next one, 13. Road rage on the road of life. Hope that's not too corny for you, but the fact is, we're all driving around, bumping into things, people bumping into us, people intentionally or inadvertently offending us and so forth. Vasant.
Yeah, yes, Vice. So the question I had was, for example, right? I have also personally been practicing some of the things that you have highlighted, but I can tell you, one or two examples that where, sometimes that is not following the script. For example, right, when you're driving, in my, in near my home, some road work is going on, and because of that, instead of 4 lanes, only 2 lanes are open now. Okay, and then when I am going to make a right turn, then you will see two flows of traffic, one coming behind, one coming from uh, on the, one coming and joining from left hand side, and the one that is following behind me. And I have to take a turn. People, the tolerance level of people driving has gone down so much that even, when you are about to take a right turn, you're not allowed to reduce the speed, right? So people honk, or people sometimes will show the anger through signs, fingers, all those things, right? So majority of the time you try to, negate that situation, like, as if, forgive, use that phrases that you had suggested. But when what is really challenging is the way they pick up speed, and they're trying to come and come behind the vehicle. That is where the challenge is.
It is a challenge indeed, Vasant. It is a challenge indeed. And that's why we're having this class. It's to get us ready for it. Now, there are different levels to pass in the road rage test. There's the ones where people, minor things inadvertently. Then you get up to, this is the calculus part where you really have to pass the course. It's harder. When somebody screams at you or violently approaches your car or gives you a gesture, get ready for that. Practice harder before you get in the car. Be aware of it and see if you can't pass that test. Because if you can pass it there, you get a taste for it and you start seeing, I can move in this world without being affected by rajas. Let
Yeah.
me see how I can do it. That's where you pass the higher course. So there's the kindergarten level, then you got grade school. You're talking about when you're in, the master's course. And there's ones even higher than that, but definitely practice for it.
Yeah, and also, the challenge for me is, I have also, so you have the free left turns, right? So when, even the straight flowing traffic, when there is no traffic, there is a free left turn. So I was, on the road, coming straight, and the person on the other side, he made a free left. And fortunately, the vehicles were damaged, my vehicle and the other person's vehicle were damaged, but at the same time, fortunately, none of us were hurt. Okay, but what is happening is, after when you have experienced that kind of, accidents, then you will be extremely cautious. But the people around, the other drivers may not realize that. So that is where, so I personally, as you said, right, the objective is to reach safe, right, rather than, going out to be on time, or that is secondary part. But majority of them, they have yet to go through this class.
It's so true. And coexisting with others in the world is not so easy, but it is more effective when we work in an enlightened way. And it's amazing how when we don't respond to rajas in others, that it surprises them and they often calm down. People actually become amazed that you don't overreact. And if you're in the mode of goodness and you actually go out of your way to assist people in various ways, or you don't respond to their indiscretions and so forth, it changes them. It changes the world. And that's the way to walk in the world. That's what Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. So we can commiserate with everything you're saying in all the scenarios. And thank you for bringing those up. It just emphasizes the point that this is an opportunity for all of us.
Perfect.
Okay, so
Thank
the
you.
last slide, since we're out of time, is number 14, and it's just a summary. Apply these antidotes to your daily life. Here they are. Here's the list to take away. Number 1, tolerate. Learn to tolerate, practice tolerance, and see what happens. There's a fruit behind every activity. Ooh, animated. Okay, next one is to, ooh, I can't even see it. What does it say, JM? I need new glasses. There's the
Tolerate, consider consequences,
consider consequences,
change anonymity to recognition,
change anonymity to recognition,
reframe,
reframe,
breathe,
breathe,
chant.
and above all, chant. And this is one of the ways to become transcendental to the modes, is when you chant the mantra, practice the mantra in the morning and keep it going. We have this saying, KTTVG, keep the transcendental vibration going. You'll notice in all circumstances, when you start getting anxiety or rajas comes up, if you want to rise above it right away, say, Hare Krishna or Nitai Gauranga, do the mantra and stay fixed on the higher vibration. JM, thanks for keeping the lights on for all of us. Don't think we don't notice or appreciate it. Thank you everyone who joined in from airplanes, from cars, from offices, from home. Looks like beaches maybe. Oh, that's probably just a picture. And it was a real pleasure. And I can't wait personally to get in the car and try this out. Let's test it out and do our homework and see what happens. Now, to say goodbye, I have a suggestion. High in the Himalaya mountains, these yogis who've learned to sit for long periods of time to meditate and look inwardly and drink the nectar of immortality they find within their own atma or their own selves, they come out and they see others. They feel rather joyful to notice they have colleagues also meditating. And so they have this charming way of saying hello and goodbye. And it's to say this phrase, Hari Bol, Haribol. Hari Bol means keep the transcendental vibration going. So I thought maybe today we could try it when we leave, as we're leaving each other. I'm
Yes.
doing it. Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Everybody,
Haribol.
see you. Safe flight,
Thank you.
Chuck. We'll see you back here soon, I hope.
I will.
Bye, everyone.